At 80 years old, Tom Selleck has lived a life few could imagine and even fewer could sustain. Known as the epitome of American masculinity, Selleck became a cultural icon with his signature mustache, rugged voice, and roles that defined an era of television. To most, he's the private investigator Thomas Magnum, the tough but fair Jesse Stone, or the commanding NYPD Commissioner Frank Reagan. But behind decades of fame and accolades lies a story not just about television or Hollywood, but about mentorship, gratitude, and the quiet power of influence. Recently, Selleck made an emotional confession that surprised even his closest fans. "He was the only one who could do that to me." And with that one sentence, he cracked open the door to a relationship that shaped the entire arc of his life. But before that mentor ever entered the picture, Tom was just a kid from Detroit with nothing more than a dream, a basketball scholarship, and the kind of upbringing that taught you hard work beat talent when talent didn't work hard. Born on January 29, 1945, Thomas William Selleck wasn't raised in showbiz. His parents, hard-working and principled, moved the family to California during his childhood, believing in better opportunities out west. They instilled in him diligence, humility, and an unwavering sense of responsibility, values that would carry him through both his career highs and personal battles. It wasn't acting, but athletics that first gave Tom structure and drive. He scored a basketball scholarship to the University of Southern California. While majoring in business administration, he modeled on the side, more out of economic necessity than ambition. He wasn't trying to be a star, he was trying to pay rent. Ironically, it was those very modeling gigs that brought him in front of a camera, a subtle twist of fate that sparked something bigger than he ever imagined. The entertainment industry didn't open its arms immediately. Tom spent years in acting schools, grinding through auditions and occasional TV commercials. For every door that opened, 5 more were slammed shut. But he kept going. Training at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, working odd jobs, popping up in blink-and-you'll-miss-it roles in the late 60s and early 70s. It was a slow and uncertain journey. Then came one of those rare fated moments in an actor's life. Magnum P.I. premiering in 1980. Magnum P.I. didn't just catapult Selleck into stardom, it placed him directly into the American household week after week. As Thomas Magnum, he was charming yet principled, sarcastic yet empathetic. He wasn't just another action hero in Hawaiian shirts, he was America's best friend. The role earned him an Emmy in 1984, several Golden Globe nominations, and something more valuable, trust from the audience. But fame has a price. When everyone thinks they know who you are, there's little room left for who you really are. While the public saw confidence, charisma, and control, Selleck was learning, quietly, humbly, from those around him. And one actor, in particular, left an indelible mark. Long before Selleck's name was in bright lights, he appeared in a recurring role on the Rockford Files. That's where he met James Garner. Garner was already an institution, celebrated for that effortless blend of cynicism and decency that made his characters so unforgettable. But to Selleck, he was more than a co-star. He was a mentor without ever calling himself one. And perhaps that's why his influence mattered so much. "He was the only one who could do that to me," Selleck said in a voice weighted with 40 years of reverence. "Only Jim could make me see the kind of man I wanted to be, not just the actor I hoped I'd become." There's a moment in every journey, one conversation, one influence, one unexpected act of kindness, that becomes a pivot point. For Tom Selleck, it wasn't landing Magnum P.I., or turning down Indiana Jones, or even becoming the father everyone wished they had on Blue Bloods. It was learning, silently perhaps, from someone who didn't just tell you how to act, but who showed you how to live. Wordlessly, James Garner set that example. Calm on chaotic sets, decent in a ruthless industry, humorous without cruelty, confident without arrogance. That kind of presence leaves a trail that others quietly follow. In his early days on the Rockford set, Selleck was still developing a sense of self, trying not to act like a rookie, uncertain of how much space he could take up. It was Garner who helped set the emotional tone off camera. He had no need to befriend the new guy, much less include him. But he did, and that inclusion stuck. Because in a town where mentorship is rare and sincerity even rarer, finding someone who lifts you up without asking for anything in return, that's sacred. Tom Selleck often reflects on that early time with James Garner, not as a milestone in his career, but as a formative chapter in his life. "Jim showed me that being respected is better than being famous," he once said. That lesson wasn't in a classroom or on a soundstage, it happened in the in-between moments. Over coffee between takes, during quiet drives home after long shooting days, in the small offhand comments that stick with you longer than grand speeches. Garner never preached. He modeled, and that, Selleck insists, was more powerful than any advice book or acting workshop. Hollywood is a place of facades, where kindness often comes with conditions. But Garner didn't play that game. He treated everyone equally, from the crew guy holding a boom mic to the producers signing his checks. For a young actor trying to find his moral footing in a world that rewarded ego, that mattered, Tom wasn't new to perseverance. He was already someone who worked his way up, pouring himself into every role, no matter how minor. But James Garner did something more than inspire work ethic. He humanized success. Before meeting him, Selleck admits he believed being a star meant becoming untouchable. Garner made him rethink that entirely. "I watched how Jim carried himself," Tom recalled. "He joked with people. He remembered names. He held doors. He wasn't putting on a show. He was just Jim. And when you see that up close, it changes the blueprint you're working from." It wasn't about the star trailers or the red carpets. It was about character, about authenticity, and about the simple lasting power of treating people right. Years later, when Tom landed Magnum P.I., he brought those lessons with him. Unlike many fresh stars who let attention swell their ego, Tom built a set culture around respect. He greeted extras by name. He took time with younger actors. Directors found in him someone who didn't just care about how the show looked, but how people felt while making it. And as Magnum P.I. soared in ratings and popularity, Selleck found himself not just juggling fame, but decisions. One of those was career-defining, turning down the role of Indiana Jones. Spielberg and Lucas wanted him. The role was his. But Magnum's contract and his sense of responsibility wouldn't allow it. That moment, historians say, could have made him a different kind of superstar. But Selleck doesn't regret the decision. Why? Because he knew who he was. His values were already shaped. And many of those values, Tom credits directly back to Garner. But the bond between the two men wasn't based on career wisdom alone. It went deeper. Shared values, a grounded sense of humor, a subtle kind of masculinity that didn't need to be loud to be strong. They were cut from the same cloth. Men who didn't chase the limelight but ended up in it because people trusted them. Their friendship stayed a quiet constant. When Tom became a father, he looked to Garner's life for reflections on balance. When navigating Hollywood politics, he remembered Garner's refusal to play games. And as he evolved from leading man to TV patriarch in Blue Bloods, he often found himself thinking about those early days, how Garner's professionalism seeped into his own approach without him realizing it. In the 1990s, as Tom's career transitioned into features like Quigley Down Under and the deeper layers of his Jesse Stone role, the influence showed in subtle ways. These weren't just roles, they were character studies. Where other action leads leaned on spectacle, Selleck leaned on empathy, on moral dilemmas, on inner conflict, on restraint. That's the Garner playbook. When Garner passed away in 2014, Selleck didn't make a showy public statement. He didn't issue press releases or pose for magazine covers. Instead, he quietly attended the funeral, choosing to mourn the way Garner lived, without spectacle. In later interviews, the emotion still clings to his voice. He wasn't just a mentor, he was an example of the kind of man I hoped I could be. Hollywood has a memory problem. It celebrates stars and headlines, but forgets the men of principle who worked in shadows, making a difference when no one was watching. Jim Garner was one of them. And for Tom Selleck, he wasn't just an actor he admired, he was the compass that kept him anchored through the turbulence of 5 decades in the industry. It's easy to measure a career in awards, ratings, and screen time. It's harder to measure the quiet impact of someone who believed in you before the world did. But for Tom Selleck, that is precisely what defines his legacy. Not that he achieved greatness, but that he did it without losing the kindness, respect, and humanity he learned watching someone else live those values first. In a world filled with egos, Garner was humility. In a world obsessed with image, he was substance. And in Tom Selleck's story, this isn't just a footnote, this is the pulse. Even as stardom wrapped itself around Tom Selleck like a tailored suit, he never stopped thinking of himself as just a regular guy who got lucky, and worked harder than most to stay lucky. Decades after the world first met him in Magnum P.I., Selleck continues to embody something that's rare in the entertainment world: consistency. Not just in his performances, but in who he is when the cameras go dark. And much of that, he claims, wasn't self-taught. It was inherited through observation, through studying people like James Garner, who operated beneath the Hollywood current while still shaping its tide. When Tom took on the role of Jesse Stone in the early 2000s, it became a moment of artistic rebirth. The quiet police chief in a small coastal town was a world away from the flashy charm of Thomas Magnum. Jesse Stone was solitary, broken in places, battling personal demons like alcohol and loneliness. But he was also principled, loyal, and sharp-witted, a man doing his best in a world that often delivers the worst. Fans immediately noticed the nuance in Tom's performance. Gone was the playful spark of Magnum. In its place, something more internal, more weathered, more real. The Jesse Stone series was more than just a new gig. It was a reflection of growth, of maturity, of stepping into the shoes of a character who didn't need to dominate the screen, but instead let silence speak. Selleck co-wrote and produced several of the films, ensuring the stories stayed intimate and character-driven. Behind that decision was a belief instilled in him long ago, that the best acting is honest and truth needs space to breathe. That's the Garner effect, letting restraint create power, not just volume. Selleck's choice to play roles like Jesse Stone wasn't about chasing darker material to appear more serious. It was about chasing roles that felt substantial, roles that showed a man trying to hold on to decency in a world that tests it. That didn't just connect with fans, it connected with Tom. Because after years of being cast as the strong, suave lead, he now understood there was a deeper kind of strength worth exploring: vulnerability. Still, Hollywood isn't always kind to aging actors. Many fade from marquee status, pushed aside for younger, flashier talent. But Tom resisted that fate, not by fighting for relevance, but by staying rooted in something timeless. In 2010, he landed the role of Frank Reagan in Blue Bloods, a CBS drama that quickly became a staple for millions of viewers. As the patriarch of a multi-generational law enforcement family, Selleck brought not just credibility but gravitas. The character was a natural evolution of everything he had played before, yet elevated by years of life experience. And there it was again, that Garner influence. Frank Reagan isn't loud. He doesn't bark orders. He leads with presence, not dominance. A raised eyebrow means more than a raised voice. He's reflective, wounded yet reliable, loyal to a code that feels both personal and professional. That's not just good writing. That's learned behavior. Traits picked up not in acting classes, but on the sets of shows like The Rockford Files, watching a real master at work. Critics and fans alike praised Blue Bloods, not just for its storytelling, but for Selleck's performance. Frank Reagan became a symbol of moral steadiness in an increasingly unpredictable world. At family dinners on Friday nights, Reagan doesn't make speeches, he listens. He wrestles with contradictions. He's tough on his kids, but tougher on himself. And through it all, Selleck channels that quiet dignity his mentor embodied so well. It would be easy to say Tom Selleck's success in his later years is the result of good casting or strong scripts, but the truth lies deeper. It lies in who he became over time, and how the right influence, at the right moment, carved a lifelong impact. That's what mentors do. They shape our instincts before we even know to call it learning. Garner didn't just help Tom understand how to survive in Hollywood. He helped him understand how to live with integrity, how to lead with kindness, and how to last in a business built on disposable people. And Tom took that torch and passed it on, not in loud declarations, but in quiet actions, on every set, with every co-star, in every line delivered with measured grace instead of theatrical bravado. That's the long game most people don't see. The kind where success is a legacy, not a headline. Where values echo louder than applause. And maybe that's why, when Tom Selleck reflects on his decades under the spotlight, he doesn't measure it in roles or ratings. He remembers moments. A laugh shared behind the camera. A piece of advice quietly embedded in a glance. And most vividly, a feeling that someone saw something in him before the world did. He was the only one who could do that to me, he said, not because he needed a savior, but because he found something far more valuable, a friend who never asked to be admired, but who ended up being the blueprint for everything that came after. There are very few actors in television history who have managed to reinvent themselves, gracefully, naturally, and without losing the essence of who they are. Tom Selleck is one of those rare few. He didn't burn brightly and fade fast. He didn't repackage himself in desperation. He evolved, gradually, just like the characters he chose to play. And beneath every performance, there was a man shaped by experience, humility and influence, not the least of which was James Garner, the man he once said was the only one who could do that to me. That statement has reverberated across media, quoted in articles, dissected by fans, honored by fellow actors. But to truly understand what it means, you have to consider the depth of what Tom Selleck has lived through, not just performed. Because a confession like that doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes after a lifetime of watching, learning, making mistakes, and growing, because someone cared enough to show the way. And in a business where very few people truly care about anyone but themselves, finding someone who leads by example is cause for reverence. The amazing thing about Selleck's career is that it never relied on spectacle. Sure, Magnum P.I. had its car chases and Hawaiian backdrops, but it was never about the scenery. It was about a man trying to do right by others while figuring himself out. Whether it was solving mysteries, standing up to bad guys, or comforting a friend, Magnum always made you feel like you were in good hands. Because underneath the Ferrari and the mustache was a man who, like Selleck himself, earned your trust through character. That's no coincidence. That's the product of influence. That's what happens when someone like James Garner isn't just a colleague, but a compass. Years after the Rockford Files, Garner and Selleck would still cross paths, sometimes professionally, sometimes just as friends who enjoyed each other's company. Garner, ever the understated presence, never looked to be anyone's teacher, and that's exactly why he was one. He didn't teach through instruction, he taught through conduct. And Tom Selleck, observant and thoughtful beneath his easy smile, absorbed every bit of it. As an actor, you're constantly fighting conflicting forces, studio demands, fan expectations, personal ambition, aging in front of the world. But Tom kept his course steady, and he often credits that to having watched someone else do it first. One of the stories he shared about Garner is remarkably simple but deeply telling. During their early days together, Garner once took the blame for a delayed shoot that wasn't his fault. He did it to protect a younger actor from getting heat they couldn't yet handle. When Tom asked him later why he had taken the fall, Garner just shrugged and said, "You only get respect if you give it." That moment stuck like a scar, invisible but unforgettable. And that principle stayed with Tom throughout the next 5 decades. You could see it in the way he coached young actors on the set of Blue Bloods, in how he deferred credit to writers, directors and crews when his performances were praised, in how he turned down roles that didn't align with his values, even if the paycheck was sweet or the exposure tempting. Back in the late 80s, when celebrity culture was beginning to morph into the toxic tabloid circus we know today, Selleck retreated, refusing to play that game. He bought a ranch, focused on family, married quietly, raised his daughter away from the flashes of paparazzi bulbs. That decision wasn't just a lifestyle shift, it was a lesson he had watched Garner live out in real time. Stay grounded, keep what matters close, let the curtain fall when the stage lights turn off. Yet none of this made Selleck any less compelling to the audience. In fact, the mystery, the quiet dignity, only deepened their respect for him. And that's perhaps the magical through line of this entire story. An actor like Tom Selleck didn't endure because he chased the next trend. He endured because he stood still in a world twirling in chaos. And in doing so, he became a lighthouse, a fixed point of integrity that viewers could always come back to, no matter how much media and the world began to change. The reason audiences view his characters as trustworthy, moral, dependable, is because those traits don't just live in the script, they live in Selleck. They were passed down, shaped, reinforced. And yes, James Garner played a pivotal role in that passing. When Selleck described Garner as the only one who could do that to me, he wasn't exaggerating. He was expressing something that defies easy narrative, a soul imprint.
Because to be impacted at that kind of level, it means you didn't just learn a craft, you learned a code. Long before counseling apps normalized the word mentor, Garner was embodying what it meant to be one. And perhaps the final act of that mentorship, the part that means the most, is how Selleck has carried that code forward. He's lived it, not by talking about it, but by showing up, by showing how to age with grace, by showing how to lead without shouting, by showing how to care deeply in a business that rewards apathy and arrogance. You can see it in his scenes as Frank Reagan, the way he listens more than he speaks, the way wisdom wraps each word like a slow, controlled burn. You saw it in Jesse Stone's haunted quietness, in Magnum's loyalty to his friends. In every role, every stare held an echo of the man who taught him to take pauses, to breathe into a moment, to act less and be more. When Garner died, Hollywood lost more than a legendary actor, they lost a moral pillar, a sort of spiritual reference point for what the business could be when done with heart. And for Tom, the loss wasn't just professional, it was personal. A great teacher doesn't come into your life with fanfare, they slip in, change you, and one day, much later, you look back and realize without them, you'd be someone else entirely. And maybe that's why now, at 80, with a full career and a still loving audience behind him, Tom Selleck made that confession, because everything has a beginning, even integrity, even grace, and someone somewhere has to model it first. Tom now looks toward legacy, toward what he wants to leave behind beyond reruns, DVDs, or streaming catalogs. He's done the work, raised the family, stayed on course. There's no more world left for him to prove himself to. But there's still a world that needs examples like the one he had, the kind that show humility isn't passivity, that being gentle isn't being soft, that real strength, the kind that truly lasts, comes not from chest-thumping performances or magazine covers, but from years of walking through fire, and never once setting someone else ablaze in the process. And that's the legacy of James Garner, not just in awards or accolades, but written quietly into men like Tom Selleck, who carry that legacy onward, not as burden, but as badge, as reminder, as North Star. So when Tom said he was the only one who could do that to me, he didn't mean he wasn't shaped by others. He meant that one man, in particular, made him better in ways even he didn't realize until long after. This isn't just a story about stardom. It's not just a behind-the-scenes biography, or a salute to a long career. It's a reminder that no matter how successful you become, there's always someone whose belief in your better self helps you uncover it. And maybe that's what we should take from Selleck's journey. Well, not just admiration for a great actor, but gratitude for the power of quiet mentorship, for the rare purity of real friendship, and for the fact that behind every icon is a human being who reflects someone else's light, just a little brighter. In the end, when all the scripts are done, and the spotlight fades, Tom Selleck will be remembered for more than just the roles he played. He'll be remembered for how he played them, and why. Because once long ago someone believed in him, before he truly believed in himself. Someone showed him that kindness is strength. That professionalism is character, and that greatness is quiet. And that someone was James Garner. He was the only one who could do that to him.